next section we're going to run through is our wild geese. So these are based on the Canadian goose style. I believe they stop off in Dumfries along the way to Canada. So we're going to make 6 of these. They're going to be a goose head with some nice wings that are attached to the arms so that the performer can make some nice movements with that. So let's go with our Canadian geese. So here we go with cutting out our geese head pieces. So I have done some templates here that you can place down onto the foam and draw around it. Now you're drawing onto black foam, so you're going to have to sort of score the line in, because nothing really makes a bright enough mark that is as precise as a pen. A ballpoint pen is probably the best thing you can use. So if you just pop that down, draw around it, you'll need good light. Now the light's fading here a little bit, it's 5 p.m, so the light's not that great, but if you do this during the daytime you should be totally fine. So you should be able to see at least some of that line pick up on the video there. I can see it quite clearly from where I'm standing. So you're just going to cut this out with a blade. You're going to need a cutting mat underneath. You need 2 of these per costume. So that would be 12 because there are 6 of these geese costumes. So basically you'll have watched the video about using foam and using a blade. So just remember your safety video. Keep your hands out of the direction of the blade, and the first thing that you're going to do is rough cut your design, because if you imagine you have 12 of these drawn out and they're all on this big huge sheet, you're going to want to cut them down into a smaller, more manageable size. So just rough cut around your lines. So that's about a couple of centimeters outside the size that I actually need, and now you've got a more manageable piece to work with. So this is quite a wobbly design, so I'm going to show you just one of the little tricks to help you with cutting. So if you start cutting and you get into a part that's hard to curve your blade, use your other hand to push the foam away out of the direction that you're going. That gives your blade more room to cut. Now it's really only for your really tight little curves, tight little corners. Just keep checking my lines there. So you can see what I'm doing. I'm pushing that other piece away all the time, so it's giving the blade plenty of space to move. So hopefully you can manage to do that. Particularly here underneath the little beak, I find a little bit tricky, where you're sort of changing direction. So move your foam around the table rather than trying to maneuver yourself around the table. That's definitely a good tip there as well. And so that is done. That is our bird shape. So I have cut out 2 of these because we're going to add these together. So try and make sure that your cutting is pretty good where the beak is, because that's the most important part that we're going to be sticking together for it to match pretty well. And then we're going to glue it all the way down. So I'm going to plug my glue gun in and I will reset the camera to show you the next bit. So we are going to stick together our 2 pieces so that we can turn them into a more 3D goose head. Now at this point you could decorate the face if you prefer. I'll leave that up to you. So basically I'm going to show you at the end, but you could do this while these are flat if you prefer. We're going to cut out some pieces that are going to add to the white bit of the cheek. We're going to cut out some eyes, and we're also going to make this beak a little bit more fancy than what it is right now in the flat foam. So you could jump ahead to that part if you like, otherwise we'll decorate at the end. So basically we need to line up these 2 beaks here. Mine are not quite matching, but that's alright. And you're going to take your glue gun and you're going to glue just beyond the beak. So I'll mark it on the template in case you're unsure. And you're just going to glue down and use the glue gun to spread that glue out really well, because it'll stop the glue from spilling out the edges if you use it more controlled action, like when you spread it out. So spread that out really well. And then press your little beak together. And hold that in place until that is set. That'll take maybe 30 seconds or so. So then we're going to move on to join in the front. Now the front is joined a little bit different to what we've just done. Here we've sandwiched two pieces together. At the front we're going to join them beside each other. So this needs to be really set before we start working on the other part, otherwise that'll just pop off. So just make sure that that's well set before you move on. So basically the head is going to go in here. So that's what we want to do. We want to pop our goose head out so that it makes more 3D. So if you press it down on your table, what we're going to do, you can see now why this needs to be set. We're going to join this together as neatly as possible at the front, and then we're going to join it a little bit further up, and then we're not going to be able to keep on joining it on its ends because of the curve. So we'll deal with that after a short while. But for this one, you need to use very little glue and spread it out really, really well. This you want to glue as neat as possible. So spread it out really, really well. And press it down on your table and push it together. Now when you do this, there will be some bit of overspill, so make sure you're not sticking it down on a table that you're not okay with getting a bit of glue onto. Now glue gun comes off, it's just a plastic, so it's just going to dry in, and it's just going to, you'll be able to pick it off the surface that's underneath. So it's just that if you're precious with your table, you might want to get something down underneath. It could even be a wee bit of cardboard if you don't have a cotton mat. So now that needs to set really, really, really well before we move on. That's a really important part of this little structure that we're creating. So I'm going to pop that to one side to let that, make sure that is dry. And then we're going to move on with turning this into a hat. Now, just for your reference, this is the prime example of a blade getting blunt. So if you end up with these little consistent little catches in the foam, your blade is ready for the bin, or at least ready. If you have these ones that have a long blade, it's ready for another piece to be snapped off because it's losing its sharpness there. Foam will blunt blades really easily. Now, if this is a brand new blade and a project just like this one here with the geese, it's not likely that your blade will be blunt on such a short amount of cutting unless it's a bad blade. You do get the odd dud, so yeah, if you're getting those little catches, that means that your blade is ready to go. So I have gone ahead and cut out the next little bit. So I just used the blade, cut out this little shape, and this shape is going to be added on to the black foam that you've already put down. So I will draw it onto a template so that you don't go wrong. But basically this is just going to be added on the bottom there in the same way that you added your front together. So it's going to have to be really neat, or as neat as possible. And I'll draw that so that you don't end up getting confused as to which way this goes on. So this is quite a lot to glue. So you're just going to do a little bit at a time, and then we'll finish in the center. So again, take your glue gun, spread your glue out really well. You don't need very much glue. Less is more. And just push those two together. Keep your fingers well away and you won't get burned. And let that set. And once that's set, you'll be able to pull this up and get in here and get the glue in there. I'm going to leave that for a second, and I'm going to move on to the other side. Again, spread your glue out really well. Push those two together. I'm going to come back to this one, it should be dry by now. So I'm just going to push that out of the way. Mind your fingers when you're doing this, you don't want any glue to fall down onto your fingers. So again, less is more. And get that pressed in. So really you shouldn't have very much glue spilling over the edges. If you do, you're just putting on too much glue. that's your two sides done. Now, before I moved on to that, I actually added a little bit more glue here before I moved on, because I only went up about as far as here and it really needed to go up to there. So I'm going to mark on the template how far up you need that glue to go, to make sure that it sits properly on the head. And that is how our geese are looking right now. The next thing we're going to do is add 2 strips of lycra. These are going to come down the side of the face and tie underneath the chin. So I'm going to pre-cut these for you so you don't have to worry about that. And again, on this little template I will have marked where you're going to add these on so that you don't get confused. So again, we're back to our glue gun. I'm going to glue gun inside the marked lines. And we're just going to lift our lycra up and sit it down on top. Now that'll be a bit hot, so if you have a bit of foam, you can just kind of bat that down. It's kind of one of the best ways to do anything that you think might have a few spills of glue over the edges. So just make sure that's well stuck. We've got all the way to the edges. So we're going to do that on both sides. And the next thing we're going to do is add some strips of elastic. So we're going to put one elastic exactly at the bottom, going back the way, away from your lycra band, and we're going to glue that on. Now I will give you the exact size of this elastic too. Actually, I'll pre-cut that. I'll send that over to you pre-cut, so you don't have to worry about that. So it's going to go right at the bottom. Again, I'll put that on the template, but it's easy, it's right at the bottom there. And then the next one is going to go probably two or 3 inches above, and we're going to stick that on there. Again, that will be on the template so you don't go wrong. And we're going to glue that down so they're both going in the same direction. Don't let the little lines send you wrong. So they're both going in the same direction. And then we're going to come to this side and pop our lycra on this side too. So this is the last time our bird will be flat, so we'll be making it a bit more 3D now by adding the 2 elastics together. So again, make sure they're well dry before you start this next bit. So there's our 2 lycra pieces. Good. And now we're going to join these together. So you'll have to turn your bird over and then just get your lycra out of the way and stick that in there. I have a feeling I've made these elastics too long, so I might have to amend this, but I'll give you the right measurements for it. Again, if you have a fear of the glue gun, get that bit of foam in there to hold that down so that you don't get a glue gun burn. And now we're going to do the same with the other elastic. And just wait till that is totally dry. So once they're totally dry, it's not just enough to leave this elastic attached to the foam, because there are going to be rehearsals with these, and you know, kids love to take things on and off really fast when it comes to costumes, so they won't be thinking about breaking things. So basically what we need to do is give a little bit of extra security on these, and the way we do that is by creating something that I would call a bridge. So basically you'll take a strip of foam, well, 2 strips of foam actually, and we're going to bridge right over what we've just done in here. So that you're essentially trapping the elastic inside there so that it won't pull off this way, because it'll never pull off back the way, but it will pull off this way if a kid's just kind of tearing that off their heads as fast as they can. which they do. So if you get that cut to the right size, you can get that covered over. And actually we'll probably use a thinner foam than this. We'll probably use half the depth of foam on this. So you'll be able to cut that with the scissors as well as anything else. And this is going to be tricky, so you're going to have to get inside here. Just get your glue gun underneath. Just make sure you're gluing over the elastic as well. And then get that little bit of foam down. Because this is a bit more tricky to get in here, you're probably more likely to have a bit of glue pouring over the edges. So just keep your fingers well away, because they don't need to be in there. You just need to hold on to the foam on the top, and that is enough. And just hold that in place then until that is dry. So definitely that's probably too thick foam at the back. So we'll use a thinner foam for that. And make sure you have some of that. So you can see the glue pouring over there. That will give a pretty decent glue gun burn. So just keep fingers away. And then you're going to do the same on the other side. Get that security. Really, the foam, it doesn't really have to be exact either. It can be just a scrap, you know, so it's nice to use up the scraps so that they don't get chucked in the bin. So that one is good as well. I would recommend also, just as I'm doing this, don't glue this and then try to get that in there. Try and always glue the thing. It's not always possible, but try and always glue the thing that's not going to move. So if you're bringing a piece of foam to something, it's better to put the glue on the thing that you're going to be gluing onto rather than the piece that you're going to be moving around. So it's just a simple thing, but mostly, you know, it's little accidents that happen like that. You drop it on your other hand, or you know, or even you drop it on the table and you put the glue all over the table. So just little things like that can just kind of minimize your risk of a burn. So again, I'm just going to hold that in place. These straps are really important, so we need to make sure that this is well stuck down before we move on. So I'm going to pop that onto the mannequin so you can see how that is coming together on the head. So there's how our bird hat is looking at the moment. So there's our little lycra straps that are coming down the sides. I actually think we could probably move those in a little bit more, probably into here. So I'll just amend that on the template. And then that's our straps at the back. And actually they're pretty snug, so probably won't have to change the size of these too much. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to need to close this in a little bit because it's looking a bit not quite right really. So we're going to close those in, and that's going to be a little bit tricky. So we'll get the camera set up and we'll get that closed in a little. So you will get a template. I'll cut this out and you'll get this template. So you'll cut this out in the same black foam as you did earlier. And what we're going to do is we're going to wedge this in between the goose head and the bottom of the neck. So basically, you'll just lay your goose down on its side and then push this piece in as far as it goes. Now if it helps and you have a pin handy, you can pin this bit here just so that it won't move on you, because we're not going to glue in here because it's actually really tricky. So what we're going to do is we're going to push this back so to expose this part, and we're going to get a little bit of glue, again spreading that out really well. Going to lift the foam and pop it down on the top so that that is kind of flush with the edges there as much as possible. Once that is set, you're going to lift this guy and you're going to get your other side done and pop that down. And again, fingers well away, they don't need to be in there. So you're just pushing your two pieces of foam together. There's a bit of overspill there, but catch your fingers. And just wait for that to dry totally before you move on to the next bit. So I'm going to pop my pin out. Turn that around so you can see. Now it is definitely, I mean, it's nicer if you can get your edges to be flush with these, but if you're struggling with it, it's okay if it's sitting back. You know, it's not going to ruin the design in any way. I guess just when I'm teaching, I'd like to teach how I would do it. So yeah, so then we're just going to move on once that is dry. And we're just going to push this. So this'll go all the way to the join at the bottom, but you're not gonna pop it out. You're not gonna pop it out there. You're just gonna leave it in behind. So if again you want to use a pin, that's another good way to do this. But otherwise you can just kind of bash on ahead. So just do one side at a time. It's not crazy important that you glue every single bit of this, as long as you're giving it you know, I guess a few tack points really. Obviously glue it as well as you can, but just if you're struggling with this particular bit. So I'm just pushing that from behind. Now I glued quite a bit there, I guess, if you took your time and did a little bit at a time, because I'm just really used to this kind of stuff, so I just bash on ahead. So get one side stuck down as far as you can get it before you get to this this join at the bottom. Get that stuck. So I've kept it pretty flush all the way, and there's not that much glue spilling over the edges, so just be really careful. I just don't want you to get glue gun burns doing this project, so minimize risk. Then if you want to flip it over and start on the other side, get a few little blobs and just spread it along with the glue gun, the tip of the glue gun. Again, there I go, racing ahead, so you can do a little bit at a time. And just hold that until that is dry. So that's going to give a nicer 3D effect at the front. And what it has done also is it's pushed this out quite a bit, so we're going to pinch this at the back to get that nice shape back into it again. So once that is dry, I'm going to flip this over and you'll see where it needs it. You know, it's not down here, it's not at the head, it's right kind of in the middle where you want to get these two pieces stuck together. So again, just two or 3 inches of glue really. Spread that out and just hold those two together, and that puts the shape back into the bird again. So again, hold this until that's dry. So at this point, if you haven't done so already, we will go on to doing the decoration on the face, which will be our little white stripe on the side of the cheek, our eyes, and we're just going to make these beaks look a little bit better. Black foam, unless it has a shiny side, it's just a little bit, well, flat looking, I suppose. So we want to give this a bit more nicer finish really. So that's stuck now at the back. And you can see we've got our shape back again, and it looks quite nice. So if you are skilled with a blade, well, you might want to just try this out before you jump into doing it on your bird. We're gonna bevel the top of the bird's beak, and by bevel I mean cut it aslant. Okay, so you would start here and we would just put the blade sideways and pull it down the beak. So you're going to need a good sharp blade for this. If your blade is a little bit blunter, it was getting those little catches like I was saying earlier, you're going to have to change the blade because it's just not going to work otherwise, so it'll drive you mad. So you're just going to put your blade really sideways, and you're just going to, I always catch the ends, I think it's a more controlled way to do it. And you're basically just going to saw a triangle off the sides. So that's all you're doing, taking that little triangle off. And then the same on the other side. So just dig your blade in and just really gently saw off and what that's done is giving you a neater looking beak at the top, because what we're going to do is we're going to put some nice shiny foam over this, so we want it to sit really nicely and not really square and clunky looking at the top. So yeah, so that's your little bevel on the top there. So we're going to add on the little white part of the goose's face. So earlier I showed you a template that looked like this because I thought we would be doing flat sides, but we're not. So we've made it a bit more 3D than I anticipated. So we've gone with this design this time. So basically you need to place that under, the other way. You place that under and you're going to find the center point of it. You can just do this by eye. I think it will be fine. And it's going to go in the center of your curved bottom of your bird. Now what I did, and I forgot to video, is I beveled a little bit more of that underneath because we want this to curve around. And again, if you've got these sharp edges, it'll just look nicer if it's a little bit curved around. So if you find that center point, and once you're happy, hold it with your other hand or a pin. Again, you can pin if you like, and get a small amount of glue in there, really not very much at all. And get that part stuck down first. You know now that's the center. So also I've just used a roll of elastic to hold this still. If you had something to hold it still, that would be good too. For these kind of things, it gives you that wee bit more control. So that could be a Pyrex bowl or a plant pot, or just something that's a bit heavy that this can just attach itself to. So then you're going to stretch this back, and if you want to, you can draw where it's sitting, if that keeps you on track. If you're happy just to kind of wing it, just move that out of the way and get a little bit of glue, and hope you glued the right place. So let's get that glued down. Again, you can see there, I only did the glue in the middle of where I was going to go. I didn't do it on the edges because again, you'll have overspill, so just stay away from the edges. And so now we're on to the other side. And I'm just doing really very little glue. Spread it all out. Stretch that back. And that's our little white bit done. So we're going to do something very similar with the beak as well. So we're just going to use a shiny foam, and we're going to cut a kind of a big triangle. We're going to glue that on, and we'll pop off the edges afterwards, so that little shape will go back there. And then the last thing we'll do is pop the eye in. I'm not sure exactly right now what we're going to use as an eye, but it would be really nice to get some buttons in there, something kind of shiny, bring these a little bit to life, or maybe some kind of glittery fabric would be quite nice in there too. So we'll see how we get on, and I'll let you know what the eyes are going to be. But for the next part, we're going to go on and do our shiny beak. So this is what we're going to use on the beak. So it's like some faux leather. Now I know it's got these like squares on it, but that's not going to be really visible from a distance anyway. So basically I'll give you a template for this. You can cut it out, and again, pin it on. It's definitely the best thing. You'll have to kind of stretch this out a little bit. Pin it on both sides, and then you can see we've got too much fabric, but that's better, so that we can glue that down, and then we can trim off these edges rather than trying to fit something perfectly onto the beak. So that's it, just pinned on. So the first thing you would do is flip back that little bit there and get a little bit of glue in there, and if you get that little bit stuck down first, and the same on the other side, you can unpin then you can glue the rest to the tip of the beak, because you'll be able to fold that back. Get your glue in there and get that pressed down really well, and then afterwards we'll trim off those bits there. So there's our beak, nice and neatly put on. So when I was cutting off that excess, I just turned the bird upside down like that, so that I could really see where I was cutting. So that's the best way to trim that off. And there's our beak looking nice. So this is my plan for the eyes. So these are smaller than the ones you'll receive. So I just had these teddy bear eyes. So I've just ordered ones for the birds that you'll be making. So the eyes that you get will be the same as these shiny ones in the middle, but they'll be as big as the piece of fabric I've put on the back. So I've put the fabric there just so that my eyes are kind of almost as big as yours, or almost as cool as yours. So these teddy bear eyes will come with a little backing. So a little backing like this. It might be a slightly different color or whatever. So what I want you to do is just find the place that the eye is going to go, and I want you to pop that into the foam and just give it a bit of a wiggle so that you make a kind of a little bit of a hole. Then you're going to take your little backing and you're just going to pop that onto the back, and you're going to push that down as far as it goes. So these are for teddy bear makings. This is supposed to catch in the fabric as you're putting it on. So obviously we don't have fabric to catch it in, but I'm hoping that by adding this little catch on the back that it'll be able to hold the foam a bit better than just the plastic eye. So if you imagine all of this is your little eye that you're going to have. So you'll have the eye with a little backing on it. You'll have already popped a hole in your bird face, and then you're going to glue these in place. So I'm just going to take the bird off the mannequin and I'm going to pop those on. So there is the little hole that I made earlier with the end of the eye. So I just shoved it in and I wiggled it around to make sure there was definitely a hole there. So what you're going to do is you're going to shove the glue gun into that hole. So with my glue gun, the tip of my glue gun is really long. So I've bought some of these for the project. So hopefully that's one that you'll get for it. So what you do is you're just going to shove the tip. It'll go in pretty easy. Shove the tip of the glue gun in there, and it's basically going to melt that hole a bit more. And then you're just going to put a big blob of glue there, no spreading around this time. And then you're just going to pop your eye into that hole and press it down. Could even give it that wiggle that we were talking about earlier. So that is that. And then you're going to do the exact same on the other side. If you have any difficulties with this at all, just give us a holler. It's all great in theory. Pop that little eye in there. Give that a wiggle to make sure that it's definitely stuck, which it definitely is. So that's the eyes onto our little bird. As I said, yours will be a lot bigger. Yours will be like 2 centimeters. I think this is 12 millimeters. So the little black backing to make it stand out a bit more. And that is actually our bird complete. So the next we need to move on to doing the wings. Here are the templates for the body of our wild geese. So this is a large sheet of foam. So this is the kind of foam you're going to be working with. So I've just tried to make templates that fit really easily into the foam. So we have the front body piece, which is this one here, and we have the back body piece. So basically this is the shape that we want, the brown one, but we're going to cut rectangles in the white template here, and then you're going to cut this out afterwards, because these corner pieces we're going to use and attach them to the back for the structure. So it's just being kind of economical with the foam. So if you take the short side of the foam, you'll fit 4 of these in a row. They should fit pretty perfectly. So you'll get 1, 2, 3, 4 across the way. So that'll be 1 piece of foam cut off. You've got 5 to do, so you'll have another one here, and then just be as economical as possible with this shape about how you can fit the 5 of those into the foam that's remaining. So just go ahead and cut out your rectangles first, and then you can cut out this shape afterwards. So I'll just set up the camera and do that. Here's my first rectangle template laid down. So you could go ahead and mark those out and cut all 4 at the same time. So I have scored into my foam already. So I used a pencil, so it's very light. You can use a ballpoint pen. It's probably one of the best things to use. So just try and keep your lines as straight as possible. I'll often use my little finger and run it along the foam as I'm cutting. Just kind of keeps me on track. So there's our first rectangle ready to go. So then take your curved shape and just pop that down. Doesn't matter if it's a little bit off in terms of the shape. It's not important. So my pencil's not making much of a mark, but it's not the end of the world. Obviously you need your cutting mat underneath the table. Make sure you don't go cutting the table underneath. So that's our 2 pieces cut off. So basically what we'll be doing with these is adding these together, and these become the structure at the back here. So it's just to use up that, and we do need something down the back so that we can add straps onto. So this is just the economical use of that. So you would have to find the center of this as well, even roughly, and make a little mark on that so that you know exactly where you're going to add your pieces onto. So there is my piece ready to go. I just used my template here to get the center point there. And actually, just a little word, don't do any gluing on your cutting mat. So just make sure that you have some cardboard or something underneath when you go to glue this part, because the glue will stick underneath and then you'll have to clean your cutting mat. So just saves you the bother. So you're going to place your first one. Actually, no, we're going to add these together first. So we're going to add these 2 together. Makes a little kind of T. So you're just going to, a little bit at a time, whatever you're comfortable with, spread that out really, really well. So you're using the glue gun to spread that out. And then just neatly put them together. It's important to get the top part fitting pretty nicely together. The bottom part doesn't matter. This is the part that's stuck to the other piece. So if you spread your glue out well enough, you won't really have any overspill that'll stick to your table. But it's going to take you a while if you're not used to gluing, or if you're not used to the particular glue gun you're using. It's going to take a little while to get that getting that kind of rhythm, I suppose. So you can see I'm not putting my fingers anywhere near it. They don't need to be in there. So again, not very much glue, and they are stuck. So the next thing, we're going to add these 2 together. So just line up your little lines. Now, if you've gone wobbly with your blade, if you haven't kept your blade straight, you'll come across things like this where you can see the gap in between. Sometimes it's just a case of, yeah, flip that over, and that's actually much better. So just kind of keep a little eye on that. If your blade wobbles to one side, you're going to obviously have a more of a beveled line. So yes, I'm just going to get started on sticking that one. So I'm just going to start in the center. Push them together. Again, my fingers are nowhere near the glue, which is the best thing, obviously. Keep your fingers safe. So once that's stuck, lift this part up. Doesn't matter which side you glue. So you can obviously be more patient than me. I'm just trying to get this done basically, so you'll have more time to spend on taking your time to do little bits at a time. There we go. So that's the part of our back structure done. So at this stage you should have cut out all the pieces that you need, so you could assemble all those at the same time, and then you would move on to doing your front piece. So obviously if you have a nice big table to work on, you could probably just cut all your pieces at the one time and just leave them to one side. That's what I would do. And then you can move on to sticking these together. So this part, once it's cut out, is going to be stuck onto this part. So I will show you how to do that. I'm going to cut out this piece and show you how to assemble those two together. Now we're going to add our two pieces together. So basically we're going to go from what would have been the initial bottom line of the back part. We're going to go up 10 centimeters. And we're going to glue these down using a bit of lycra so that they can kind of flop back and forth when we come to storing them. So you can either, if you have a ruler, you can just go 10 centimeters up. But in case you don't have a ruler, I have written some guides on this piece here. So I hope this isn't confusing, but this might just be something that could help you. So if you lay this down on your back piece, so just ignore this for a second, and you line up all your lines with your foam, this will keep you exactly on track to make sure that you add the top piece 10 centimeters up and exactly in the center. So it's written there on the side 10 centimeters, so you would add that, or put that line beside the foam here, this line beside there, that one there, and that one there, and that'll stop you from going a bit wonky. So if you like to, then you could just make this line mark on your foam, and the same here. So this is just if you don't have a ruler, or maybe it's just an easier way, or maybe it's confusing, I'm not sure. So basically, yeah, so that is that line, those lines are now marked, so you can get rid of this, and there are your lines to join up. So you just sit them there. Okay, so once you've got that done, you're going to use some lycra, and we're going to glue those down. So I'm going to send you the lycra pieces so that you don't have to worry about cutting the correct size for this. So I just want to get mine the right size now. They're a wee bit too long. So just sit your foam right on that line, and we're going to add our lycra on the top bit. If you have some pins, you could pin the foam in place so that it won't move while you're doing this. You could just do that. Might be kind of handy. Pins and foam are a match made in heaven. So once you've got that top bit done, if you find that too hot, you can just get a wee bit of foam and use the foam to bat that down. So you're also gonna glue the underline of the foam as well. It's just going to give it a better fit. And then we're just gonna spread out some glue underneath. I'll let that sit down. So obviously if you don't spread your glue out enough, it'll pour over the edges and catch your fingers. So it's best to spread it out really well, or else don't go too close to the edges at all. So that's one side, so you're going to do the same on the other side. Obviously careful not to glue your pins in place. and that is our two pieces stuck together. So I'm going to let them set for a minute, and then we're going to move on to putting the straps onto the back that come around the front to be able to tie this onto the body. So we're going to put 4 straps onto these. So we're going to put 2 on the back and 2 on the front, and they'll be able to tie at the sides. So we're going to put them on an X at the back. You're going to have to just judge this for yourself, because these are pieces that we're cutting out. I can't mark a template for you, so you can either work off this one or just kind of judge for yourself. Basically, we need the corner to touch the other side, and then the same on the other side, and that's just stopping this from pulling apart. Really is the reason we're doing an X in the first place. So straps are always the first thing to go on a costume, and so we just need to be extra careful and just glue that. On the sides, and then sit our other one so it's fairly even. It's not crazy important that they're even, because you know they're going to be pulled anyway, so it doesn't really matter what direction they're going. They'll be pulled in the direction the performer needs. So again, a wee bit of foam to back that down will protect your fingers. And you just glue a little bit at a time, spread the glue out. So that's our back straps done. So now we need to do the same on the front. So we're just going to flip this around, and did I mark this? Yes. So pretty much identical. Again, you can just judge this off the templated one. Now, because these straps are going to be under a bit of pressure, we need to create a little bridge on the edge of these. So that's just going to be a little scrap of foam. Can be any size really. Some of the scraps that you've just cut off, even this little bit in here, can become little scraps for this. So it's just little long lines. And you just put that across here, and that just gives it extra security so that this doesn't pull up and off the foam entirely, which could easily happen. So again, just spread out your glue well. Just leave that sitting down. Likewise, we should have done that on the back, so I'm just going to flip that around and do the same there. Doesn't matter what size they are, as long as they're covering over the fabric, as long as they pop over. Like, they could be a little bit shorter than this, but... And actually I'm just going to curve that one because we've got a curved shape there at the back. And then we'll do the same on the other side. And that is our straps nice and secure. So after I did that, I just realized that we would need to do a little something up here, because that could be a part that could come off as well. So likewise, now I'm not going to stick it like stuck to this part here, but just give it a little, you know, ½ centimeter away from the front piece, I guess. And just pop that down there. So it's just hanging out over the edges there a little bit. So do the same on both sides. So we're just going to pop that onto the mannequin now so that you can see what that looks like. So we're going to move on to doing the wings. So the first thing we're going to do is take some white fabric. This one's a little bit creamy fabric, but I think you'll have white. And you're going to cut this shape. I will give you the dimensions of that shape. So it's basically like a square folded over into a rectangle, and then we just cut off the ends so that we start to go to a taper, so we get the ends of the feathers quite pointed at the end. Then we're going to take a strip of foam, again in a long taper. This taper is going to be longer than the fabric because the fabric is going to end and the foam is going to continue with our feathers, and we need to glue these two together. So if you lay your fabric down on your table, we're going to glue the ends of our foam to the ends of the fabric. So you can either put the glue onto the fabric or put the glue onto the foam, whichever is easier. And you're just going to put that right flush with the end. And you can see I've left a little overhang there. That's just for neatness. So we're just going to, we'll do this afterwards anyway. We'll neatly fold that up. So anyway, you can just continue on your foam. So you can see I'm not really spreading the glue out as much as I would be telling you to. So I guess it's just a little bit harder when you're doing it on fabric to do that spread. But again, you're not putting your fingers anywhere near it, so if there's a bit of overspill, that's fine. So I'm just leaving that little edge. Just run all your way to the end, and that is one side done. So once you're sure that is completely set, flip it over and get ready to do your other side. So just get your fabric all sitting nice and neat. So just take your time, as always. Doesn't matter if you miss the odd bit as you're going along, because we've got these little overhangs and we'll be gluing them down anyway. So if you miss them wee bits, it's not gonna be the end of the world. So I guess you'll need a little bit of foam to bat down these little corners now of fabric that are sticking up, because that certainly would be something that would cause you a glue gun burn, because there will be some, so I'm trying to spread it out really well, but you will have some overspill there. So if you get your little bit of foam and just bat that down as you go. So the reason we're putting the foam in is so that these wings can have a bit more structure to them, to make them kind of stand out properly. Otherwise they'd just be kind of flopping down and they just wouldn't look too good. So that's one side done. So just do your other side as well. And then you see what I mean? It gives them a little bit of structure there already. So once you've got that completed, we're going to move on to doing our feathers. So basically the person's arm will be inside there, so we need to put a little something for them to hold so that they can manipulate these, because they'll be longer than the person's arm itself. So we'll put a little stick in here so that they can kind of wobble those around a bit, and then we're going to cut individual feathers and we're going to add these all onto the end to give a really nice wing effect. So there's the little stick that we're going to use. I'm going to cut those sticks in advance and I'll send them over to you the right length, so you don't have to worry about that. And basically we're going to attach it to the foam, and then this part on the inside will be the part that they can hold on to. So we'll just be attaching it from here on. So we're just going to pop that on the inside. I'll let you know how long. Actually, you can just work off the the templated one anyway, as to how long that should be in there. So just so that it doesn't move, just gonna put a wee bit of glue gun on that first. Now keep your fingers well away while that sets, because it will just pour out the edges. And then we're going to tape around that. So once that's totally set, and we would tape it. So actually I'm using masking tape just now, but you would put gaffer tape on that. So if you use some white gaffer tape, that would be great. So you're just wrapping around and around till it gets to the end there. So now that has a nice holding mechanism on the inside. So yes, there's quite a bit in there. So it doesn't matter if they're holding on to the end or if the stick is kind of down their arm a little bit. So it's still comfortable. So that's that part. So the next part we're going to get on to doing our feathers. So I'm just going to make the templates for those, and then I'll show you how to cut those out and assemble. Here is the wing template that we're going to use. So this is all stuck together, but actually you'll be cutting each one of these individually. So the foam part is from here on, and from this part in here is this fabric. So it's just the ends that you're making. So we'll be using a thinner foam, so you'll be able to cut these with scissors if you prefer. If you have a blade and a cutting mat, you can also do that, but that's entirely up to you. The foam is so thin, it's really easy to cut with the scissors. So the first 1, 2, 3, 4, the first 5, you're going to do 2 of each one, because we're going to do a back and a front on the wing itself. For the rest of them, because the fabric gets quite straight at the bottom, we're just going to do singular versions of them on each wing. And then the very last bit in here is one little piece all together. So I have marked them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so that when you cut these off to use them for templates, you won't go wrong when you're laying them down on your wing again. So I'm going to cut out some of them, and I'm going to start sticking those down so that you can see how to put that together really easily. I've just done a calculation of the wing pieces so that you can stay on track with cutting out each of your pieces. So there are 6 geese in total, which would be 12 wings. The prototype will count as 1. I'll do 1 wing, I won't do 2. So that will leave you with 11 wings to do. So if you break down the individual pieces, which are these ones, you've got the 1 to 4 piece, which is the one all together. So you need 11 of those, 1 for each wing. Then the 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, they're single pieces. You need 11 of each of those. And then the last 5, which is 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, you need 22 of, because they're double-sided. So there'll be one on that side and there'll be one on the other side as well. So that should keep you on track. I would recommend probably just cutting all the same pieces at the same time, and then lay your template on top of it on the table so that you've got all your number 1s to 4s, and then you've got all your 5s, all your 6s, all your 7s. And if you keep the template on top of your foam pieces, then you can add them all in the right way. So that's how I would do it. So I'm just going to cut out those pieces and we'll assemble that wing. So there's all my pieces sitting there ready to go. We're going to take off a little bit of this corner edge here as well, because just when we sit this down on top of our arm, you can just see that it just doesn't look right. So we're just going to take off that little bit first. Now, because we've cut that needs to be glued back together. Just get in there with the glue gun. And we're sealing off our end there as well. Okay, so I've got all my pieces ready to go. So I would suggest that we start on the inside and work our way to the top. So you can just leave your template sitting on the wing if that's the best way for you to keep you on track. I'm just going to remove all my template pieces. It's just to make sure I didn't go wrong. So I guess when you're cutting all of these, if you can just be organized, I suppose, you won't go too far wrong. But at least you've got the guide there anyway to kind of keep you on track. So I would start with the inside bit. So just make sure that your fabric is laid out, stretched out properly as much as possible. And then lay your template down, and once you've got that laid down, push it up out of the way a little bit, for at least for doing the bottom bits, and then you know you're going to start in here. Obviously we don't really want to see the end of the fabric, so you just kind of place it where you think looks good. Now I have a load of pen marks on mine, so hopefully, actually I'm going to get rid of them. I'm forgetting that it's going to be used and it's not just a prototype. So yeah, if you try not to leave any pen marks on your piece. As well, when you're cutting these, you know, they are just a guide. So if you go off the lines, it's not an issue. We just want to get some nice shapes onto them, so they're not. There's no exact science happening here with this kind of project. So there we go. That looks about right to me. It's really close to the edge, and then just lift it back, pop down your glue gun, and then afterwards we'll get the little bits, because they're a little bit more tricky to get in there. Again, if it helps you, just have a wee bit of foam ready to bat those down, just to keep your fingers away, if that works for you. So the whole point of us keeping these separate and not cutting one big strip is so that we can fold them up basically, but also that we can get a bit more movement into the costume, which is kind of basically what we want, really. But also, yeah, for storage, you can just fold them up. So we're leaving about a centimetre of a gap in between each feather. So just bit by bit. Again, just a guide, you know, it doesn't have to be super exact. Close to the end here now. Let's get them sitting properly. Just make sure you don't end up going really wonky when you're doing them, I suppose. You know, you don't end up sticking them down the way, so you're always kind of keeping almost like a straight line in between each one. And so that is almost them all on. The last part is the top bit. So I just want to make sure that you can see this last top bit, because it's trickier, obviously. You've got the stick in there and everything. So we're just going to stick the foam to the fabric first, and we'll worry about the stick afterwards. Again, trying to stay with our nice little line in between. I'm just going to hold that for a few seconds to make sure that gets stuck properly. And then we're going to run out our stick and glue that all the way down. Now we want to do the same on the other side. and get these two stuck together. So if you start at the opposite end this time, start at the tip of the wing, just so that we can match these up, and then just spread your glue out really well and get a little bit on the stick. And then pop that down. Just be mindful of overspill. And once that is set, we'll continue our gluing all the way down. And there we go. And you see, I'm not worried about this top bit. Mostly I'm worried about getting the feather stuck to each other at the bottom of the feather rather than the top, because we're just not going to get over that little bit of fabric that's there, and foam and stick and everything. So I'm just going to pop that down. I'm going to have a look at this now and see if we really do need doubles on these 3 or 4. We might only need the doubles on the top one, so I'm just going to test that out and see how that see how it works and see how it flows, and then we'll make a decision on the pieces there for that. So I have just pinned that onto our mannequin, and actually I don't think we do need doubles on the rest of them, so we'll just leave it as singles for everything else and just the double at the top so that we can cover in that stick and stuff. So that is going to be glued on kind of on like an extended shoulder, so from here to here, and then the bottom will be open so that the performer can get their hands in there really easily. But that's actually got a lovely flow to it already, so I'm quite pleased with that. So yeah, so the last thing you would do is to paint. So these geese they've got quite a bit of brown in them, so we'll be looking at putting a bit of brown into the tips of the feathers there, just to give these a little bit more texture. But they've already got a really nice movement, and we're able to just bunch those in, so that will be able to be stored really easily as well. So yeah, so the next step is to get a bit of painting onto these. So, quick update. I have just done painting on the wings of the bird, and it's just really tricky. So I think unless you have a lot of creative skills, you just struggle with that, and the fact that they're all glued together and you need a big table, etc. So executive decision is to use spray paint on those. So obviously we're not going to ask somebody to use spray paint in their houses. So we'll just readdress that at a different time, maybe closer to the parade. We'll get a little spray job done on those birds. So for the moment, you don't need to attach the arms to the body, so just leave them separate. It'd be a lot easier for us to spray paint them if they're separate. So you should have your head piece, your body piece, and then your wings separate, and that will be you done.